Okay, ready? Good to go.
We're good, man. Good morning, everybody. Please welcome me in giving Shaun Petrie a hand for joining us today. Thank you for coming to our 2025 anniversary sale. We really appreciate you all here. He has some really great things. So, Shaun, take it away.
Thanks for joining me. I really appreciate you all showing up to discuss the inner workings of the hoof. Today, I just thought it would be really cool to go over some of the internal structures that make up the dead structures that we all know, particularly the solar corium and the lamina. We're going to try to pull this off later in a dissection. But I figured first we'd help you understand the foot a little bit, understand some names, and what we do as a farrier and why we do it. Everybody knows the parts of the hoof, right? Everybody? So here we have, is that the light? Doesn't really show up on the TV. Here we have the heel bulb, the heel, the quarters, and the toe. When we trim these, we usually trim them on a three-dimensionally plane, so that means we trim them from here, here, and medially laterally. We'll show that in the next slide. Here's the hoof wall, the white line, the sole, the frog, the bars. You got the central sulcus. I'm always yelling about the central sulcus because it's prone to bacteria and thrush. And what we try to do as farriers, we trim, right? What else do we do? Angles. Why do we want those angles? So what we try to do is equalize the foot and bring it back into a round shape to kind of make the best structure for the hoof to stand on. Here in the example, we have one that's medial-laterally unbalanced. And right here, you can tell this one's 8 degrees off, and you can see how much that actually makes that bony column twist. So when we're trimming that, we really want to make sure our medial-lateral heels are on the same level plane. That way, we're not kind of straining the collateral cartilages of the structure. Here we have one that's actually foundered or rotated. You can see that the bone is dropped and rotated from the outer wall and is heading towards the sole. So we try to fix those angles. Here we have a negative palmar angle, and that's actually where the hoof in the pastern axis is dropping down past it and is actually pushing down on the back. And you can see that in the negative with the lines not in a line there. Here's what we really want to strive for as farriers when we're trimming a foot. We want to go for medial-lateral balance. That way the bony column is in line with the foot, and the articulation is in line with the middle of the hoof capsule itself. Really, it's all about balance when we come to trimming feet, and that's what we try to achieve the mostly. But I figured we try to get into some of these sensitive structures, but we got to have bones first, right? So we got to make up bones. What makes up the horse leg itself? So here we have a bony column, and we have the cannon bone, the long pastern, the short pastern, and the coffin bone. They also there's many names for all these, and we're going to stick with the most common. Here we have the sesamoid bones and the navicular bone. And what we need to, once we got bones, and those are structural, and that's what gives the horse the ability to stand on itself, but we got to connect those bones. So we need, here real quick, this is I thought was really cool. This is how it corresponds with the human finger. This is your front leg. So this would be your coffin bone, your short pastern, your long pastern, your cannon bone, your splint bones, and your carpal bones. Here you have the same in the behind. It's just a little different. We got the torus and the tibula. So now we got bone structure, and the horse can have something to stand on as a skeleton structure, but we got to have support to these bones to keep them together. So then each bone has collateral ligaments, and they attach here, 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 here. And collateral, that means both sides. So we have them on each side. And there's many ligaments to the horse's leg, but the most important thing about ligaments is they help support bone or suspend. And let's see here. So now that we got our bone connected and it's all structurally sound by collateral ligaments, we need those joints to move forward and articulate. So what we have then, we have joints. And inside those joints, we have synovial fluid that produce a lubrication for the joint and allow the bone to articulate. So you can see how they can kind of move a little bit, but they're designed for more of a forward motion. So here we got, now we got the bony column and we got the bones connected. So we need something to move those bones. And what moves bones? Muscles. But we need muscles because there's no muscle below the knee in a horse's leg. So we have tendons. So those tendons are connected to bones. And they help either extend or flex the leg. So we have 4 tendons that motivate the leg in articulation. We have the common digital extensor tendon. It comes down the front of the leg, inserts to the bottom of the long pastern, and comes around and attaches to the extensor process of the coffin bone. Right here, comes down, attaches, and attaches here. And that just is what it is. It flexes the foot forward, and that helps extend it forward. Here we have the the deep digital flexor tendon. Helps just what it says. It helps flex the tendon. It comes down the back of the leg, over top of the sesamoid bones, and attaches itself to the semilunar crest of the coffin bone. So nervous. Just loosen up. Right? The suspensory ligament, that's just what it is. It helps suspend. So it comes down, attaches to the back of the cannon bone, comes down, around, and splits in 2, and attaches itself to the long pastern at the bottom. So now that we have all that tendons, and that actually helps extend and flex our bony structure, you got to have blood supply. That's what helps it nurture some of these sensitive structure. And here we have arteries, veins, and nerves. Everybody know what arteries do? They supply blood, oxygen-rich blood, to the hoof. What do veins do? They take it back. Here we have the vascular system of the horse, and you have the corresponding artery and nerve and veins all working as a network. And you can see how porous this coffin bone is and how many holes it is, and it allows to attach soft tissues. See how it's nice and porous? Everybody see that? And that's where our vascular is, and that's where it feeds our lamina and gives the lamina nutrition to grow the outer hoof wall or attach the hoof wall to itself. Here we have a veniogram, and it shows a really good detail on how those blood flows feed some of those areas like the corium and the solar arch and the lamina. Everybody knows what nerves do? They kind of help the foot. It's the first indicator of soreness, so that helps feeling. It actually helps them know where their foot is, their leg is, so it kind of helps them that way. Oops, wrong back here. So now that we got blood flow to these sensitive structures, we can make up some of these sensitive structures in the foot. And what we have here is the blood flow would fill this lamina and the corium and would feed the tissues and produce the hoof wall or the outer hoof wall or the bulbs or the frogs. Each one of these tissues inside has a sensitive that make it up, and the dead is what we work with. So we try to nourish those live tissues and keep healthy ones because that determines like our hoof wall and how it produces healthy horn. So it is very important, the vascular system and how it feeds these. And that's what I want to try to get into today really is some of these solar coriums and what makes up the dead hoof that we all see, or we foliate or trim, or you see the frog or the bulbs or the buttress, and maybe identify some of these points where these abscesses come through and they get stuck between the solar corium and the hoof wall. And we can kind of point out that. Maybe point out the navicular bone, some of the suspensory ligaments of the navicular bone, and how maybe that affects some of the pathology in there and some of those problems we get today. Everybody knows what the horse capsule is designed to do. It's designed to absorb shock, right? So in there we have what's called a deep digital cushion. And this is a fibery tissue, and it absorbs some of the shock here. You can see how spongy. Actually, when I was cutting through it yesterday with the bandsaw, it actually stopped the bandsaw. So that's how fibery it is and how elastic and how it squeezes. You can see how this foot squeezes and expands and contracts. Here we have the articulating surface of the coffin bone and the navicular bone, and our short pastern would sit right in there. Here we got the angular cartilage, and those just kind of help support the blood vessels, the digital cushion, and they actually have our vein, artery, nerve where it comes right up through there. See that? Oops, sorry. I'll come back there. I will actually walk back there and give it a squeeze. How's that? See here, there's the fibery tissues that we're talking about in the digital cushion. And that's right underneath there. And that's right underneath your frog. And see how that pushes out? That distributes the load. Most of the horse's shock, though, is actually dissipated. By the time it ends up at the foot, they say 70% of that horse's load is already dissipated through the limb. So you're only really getting so much through the force of the foot. Here we can walk down. Watch it expand. See how it squeezes those blood vessels?
Ah, wow.
Everybody knows how the blood kind of flows through the foot. You can kind of explain that as the hoof comes down, it engorges itself, and as it comes up, it's released. So you can squeeze your fist real hard and release, and that's kind of how the blood flow pumps up through the foot. How's that? Now, when I was actually skinning the one leg, you could actually flex the fetlock joint and actually see the blood flow through the artery.
Oh my God.
Here we have the artery. Artery, vein, nerve. Here's it coming up the backside of the leg. Here's our angular cartilage. That's what you feel on the outside of your hoof when you're palpating. Everybody see that? See how that's angular cartilage right there? Here's our deep digital cushion without cut. Pretty cool. Let's come back there.
Where's the flexor tendon?
The deep digital flexor tendon comes down back here, comes around the foot. These are annular ligaments that are attached to and wrap around and support the fetlock joint. We'll cut into this and we'll find that. Everybody see that digital cushion there? Angular cartilage helps dissipate the load. Everybody see this?
Yeah, thanks.
See the digital cushion?
Yeah.
Angular cartilage. That's most helps absorb some of the shock. With the lamina, a little bit to a point. See how we got the angular cartilage. Angular cartilage. Flexor. Go for it. We'd like questions.
When you have these metal shoes put on them, how much of this flexion are you taking away from your foot?
The foot's always going to expand.
Yeah.
It's going to expand over top of the shoe. You can see this a lot of times in your aluminum shoes. You can actually see the heel wear. That's why we try to leave at least 2 to 3 centimeters of expansion because the hoof will actually flex that much. Let's see if we can get this to flex. Let's see if we can see it from the back. Oops, sorry, Melinda. Let's see, if I push down, can you guys actually see how that functions? As it comes down the hoof. And as it's doing that, it's compressing blood and pumping it back up to the heart every time it flexes. Yeah, so these heels will actually, they'll move at least 3 centimeters. That's why we try as farriers when we're shoeing, we try to leave about a nickel's width or dime's width of heel suspension for that foot to actually expand and contract. Because you don't want to lock up the foot because the foot is what takes a lot of that shock and load. Any other questions on that? All right, well, I figured today we try to get into some of these sensitive structures that make up the outer hoof wall and the sole wall and the frog and the commissaurs. So what I figured is we'd actually peel this off. Let's try to get this off. You probably. Let's walk around real quick and point out the coffin bone, the navicular bone, the short pastern, the long pastern, the impar ligament. Here we have the tendon comes around, the deep flexor tendon comes around and attaches to the coffin bone. Let me see that. Here's your navicular bone. Here's your impar ligament. Here's your coffin bone. This is, I didn't trim this guy. I actually trimmed the other foot. Here's your digital cushion. See that?
Oh my gosh, you can see the tendon.
Yep.
Like,
See how that works?
yeah, okay, cool.
So your tendons are your motion. They're attached to muscles. Each tendon is attached to the same muscle. So if it's a common extensor tendon, it's attached to the common muscle. The deep digital flexor tendon is attached to the deep flexor muscle. Isn't that cool? Let's walk around. You can kind of see the impar ligament. Here's the impar ligament right here. It's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of trauma sometimes with the navicular bone. Here's our attachment of our deep flexor tendon. It attaches to the bottom of our coffin bone. Kind of see how that works. Let me get a.
Yeah, it's a little fresh.
Let me get a. She's fresh.
Yeah.
Let me just come over here. You see that? Here's our tendon, superficial flexor, our deep flexor. Here's where it attaches to the coffin bone. Here's the impar ligament and the distal ligament of the navicular bone. Let's go to this side real quick. And then we'll tear into this foot and find some of the solar corium and the lamina and some of these structures that make up the dead. We were over here. Here we go. Here's our coffin bone, our navicular bone, our short pastern. Here's our impar ligament.
Is the lamina here?
The lamina is right here.
Okay.
It is attached to the outer hoof wall.
So there's not a whole lot of it at all.
It interlocks these structures.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. We're going to try to pull off a lamina, and we're going to see how the structure, the attachment of the hoof wall.
Cool, thank you.
See how that goes? Coffin bone, navicular bone, short pastern. Here's your suspensory ligament of the navicular bone. Here's the distal ligament of the navicular bone. You guys want to see? It's coffin bone, navicular bone, short pastern. Right here is your impar ligament, your distal impar ligament.
Is this a healthy foot?
This is a healthy foot. When I was trimming him the other night, he actually had quite a bit of sole. And he was a pretty healthy guy. And when I was going through his bones and cutting him up on the bandsaw, he was actually, I was like, man, it must have been something sickness that got him because it wasn't his feet. You know what I mean? It was.
That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, it was definitely his feet because I didn't see any pathologies in there when I was actually dissecting him. But what I thought was fabulous is as I'm really cutting through that with the bandsaw, it actually stopped the bandsaw, that digital cartilage in the back, and it actually that's how fibrous it is. I mean, the whole foot cut like butter, and then it got to the digital cushion, and it just locked that bandsaw up. I actually had to like slowly feed it through.
Can I see that?
Yep, here's the navicular bone.
And that causes so many problems. It does.
Right?
Is it that tiny little bone right
Right
there?
here's the navicular bone.
Oh, it is tiny.
Here's the suspensory ligament of the navicular bone.
Okay.
Here's the distal ligament of the navicular bone.
Okay.
And it kind of feeds and attaches into the coffin bone and comes around with the deep flexor tendon and attaches there as well.
Show the camera.
Here we have the coffin bone, the short pastern, navicular bone. Here's the navicular bursa. Here's the impar ligament. Impar ligament. And this is the suspensory ligament of the navicular bone. What I thought was cool of this one is you can see the terminal arch in this foot that actually creates the arch of your sole. Here's the terminal arch. This is the coffin bone right here. This is the lamina. This is what attaches it. And this is called the terminal arch. You can see how thick our actual sole is right here. And it has solar corium on the bottom of the coffin bone that make up the dead tissue, what we trim on. Here's the terminal arch. Here's the laminae. See how that creates? That's the tip of our coffin bone. Tip of the coffin bone. We can also see the articulation surface of the navicular bone. It's pretty slimy. That's actually synovial fluid in there. If you wanted to feel it, you could. It's pretty cool. You'd be amazed how lubricant it is. There's our terminal arch. This is the lamina right here. See how it attaches itself through the wall? And that's why we have those blood vessels. And they feed that live and attach and keep that engorged with blood. We see that? You guys are kind of missing out. I'll have to throw it at you later. Let's come around here. Oh, you want to see real quick? Here's our sole, terminal arch. Here's our lamina. Right here, that's our attachment of our hoof wall.
This is where you're trimming.
Right here is where we're trimming. Here's the junction of the white line. The junction of the white line, a lot of people think it's this whiter layer here. And it's not really that whiter layer. That's the internal wall stratum medium. The white line is actually down here, and it actually is the junction between the sole and the outer hoof wall. It's actually what attaches them both together. You guys want to pass this? You probably don't want to pass it around, huh? Everybody see this? Terminal arch. Here creates our sole arch, or our sole. Here's our lamina. Articulating surface of the navicular bone. Here's the top of our coffin bone. Here's the extensor process of the coffin bone where the common extensor tendon attaches. You can actually see the deep flexor tendon in here as well. It wraps around the navicular bone. It's right here. It's this brown little line. We'll see it better when we take off the foot. Here's our terminal arch. Here's our lamina. Here's our white line, what's left of it. It's our junction between the outer wall and the sole. So the white line is what we nail through, and that's usually what we try to stay in, because if you get too far over, you can see how much, as that nail travels through that wall, there's not very much room in there. So as wide as that nail is about as wide as the room we got to drive a nail. So sometimes when we get a hot nail or a close nail, that's why, because there's just not enough room. I could actually drive a nail in here. I don't have one. But you could see how it just passes the sensitive structures. So it's very, very tough. You want to see that? Here's our articulating surface. This is the coffin bone. Here's the navicular bone. And the navicular bone, it's a fulcrum. So it helps the deep digital flexor tendon flex the coffin joint. All right, let's tear into this and find some live lamina. What do you think? Some sensitive lamina. Medium or large? Or none?
I'll take gloves for sure, buddy.
I'm gonna go gloveless. What else we got on? I know we have some. So here are our live structures. Here's what the internal foot looks like. And this is the corium. So we have the papilla up here, the corium, the coronary corium, and the lamina corium, and the solar corium, and the frog corium. And each one of those tissues are different. That's why they look different when we see them when we're picking out our feet. Each tissue is different, but what we're going to try to find is those structures that make it up.
What are we doing here?
If you guys want, these ones are dried. So you can pass those around.
Not from yesterday.
Not from yesterday. Kind of pass them around, everybody kind of back and forth. Here's our hoof capsule. So here's the insensitive laminae of the hoof capsule, and that is our attachment of our hoof wall. And what we're going to find is the sensitive attachment to that. So it kind of interlocks itself like this. This is what's most common when you guys have laminitis. This is the structure that tears or weakens, and that allows the coffin bone to rotate. Go ahead, you can pass that around. You can feel those little fibery hairs, and that's the attachment of the hoof wall. You can also see the corny band groove, in which the corny band corium sits inside and actually produces the hoof wall. All right, let's dig in.
At least you brought me gloves. It's very
I
nice.
tried. Let's see how this guy pulls. We actually might have to score it here. I didn't want it bleeding all over, so yeah, just at the top. Actually, let's go to the side. You'd be amazed how hard the foot is cutting through the horn tubulars and how well it actually is attached to the lamina. But what we're going to try to do is pull off this sole and show you guys the opposites. Oh, this is going to be a good one. I can already tell. It's already trying.
Besides being stubborn.
Yeah, I didn't cut it enough here. But this way we can see the attachments of the sole and the outer hoof wall. But there it is. Let's get this heel bulb a little bit. All right. Cool. This is great. You might have to pull it to the edge of the table for me to flip it down. And what we're going to do is just going to try to grab this. We're going to try to work it off our lamina. Let's turn it here. The attachment is very, very strong, and that's good for the horse.
Not good for this.
Not good for this.
Do you need me to hold it here?
You might be able to over there. Let's flip it. We actually had, when I was trimming this guy, he had a crack. And you can actually see that crack's trying to split on me right now. See this crack?
Throw it back on the edge.
Oh yeah. Just trying to get it all free before we peel it down. I think this is a quarter horse, to be honest with you, when I was trimming his feet. We can tell this is the lateral side, this is the outside, because it's actually longer. See the heels? The lateral heel is usually longer than the medial heel.
Is that for balance?
Yeah, in landing, they tend to be a little shorter on the inside. That's why sometimes we put those lateral extensions on or medial extensions to kind of even them up, get them to land right. most horses land, they say they land toe heel, but most horses land laterally first and then land heel toe. Pull them back your way just a little bit. Okay. All right, well, we're going to pull this down and we're going to see the solar corium and the frog corium, and that's what makes up the dead frog and the dead sole that we trim, pick, or feed every day. Here we go. Let's get a little more bite. Here we go.
How long ago did this horse pass?
I got him last week.
Oh my! I can't say what's in there, but I can.
Let's let me clean my hands real quick, and we'll actually go show you guys some of this. We can actually pull this off the rest of the way. You leave it on for a sec?
Yeah, hold on.
So here in my right hand, we have all the dead stuff that we work with on a daily basis. And they correspond with the live stuff on the foot. You can actually see the pigmentation that actually transfers through on the sole.
Wow. So the whole part that you have in your hand is totally dead.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and that's what we trim. Now, we want to leave as much as this as possible because that only protects from the ground surface and the rocks and all the terrain that the horse, and it helps with distribute the load as well.
But when the nail's going through, isn't it coming up here a little further into live?
No.
It's not.
If we are in the live, your horse is lame.
Okay.
So we only nail up through the dead. The
so
sole.
the nail's going to come out through here then?
Yes.
On this little edge right here?
Well, we usually try to go through the junction, which is the white line. Here you see the black
Yes.
and the white.
Yes.
That's not your white line. Everybody always thinks that's your white line. The white line is actually right here. It's the creamier, darker color.
Oh.
And that is the attachment between the sole and the wall. So that's actually what the white line actually what holds the two attachments together and makes the junction between the sole and the outer hoof wall. Here we have the solar corium, the frog corium. We even have some lamina on the bars. That's actually the bars.
Thank you. Oh, hope she wants me too. Oh. Ew. Ew.
Here we go.
Nice thick sole.
Let's go down here and get these guys in the middle. They're missing out. So here we have the solar corium, and that makes up our dead tissue here.
So, and this is not the white line?
That is not the white line. So here we have the outside, right? This is the stratum, and that's what makes up your hoof wall, and this is the stratum medium. And this creamy color on the inside is actually the white line. And that is the junction between the wall and the sole. So that actually combines the sole and the outer wall together. Here's the inside again. Here's the...
What's that black thing?
Right here? Up?
Yeah, is that
Pigmentation. It's funny because the pigmentation will actually carry through to the dead and actually see it on the bottom when we're trimming it. So the color of that tissue, it actually comes through, but it's made up from the sensitive structures.
So when there's an abscess,
This is where they get trapped, between the dead and the live. So that's why sometimes they're hard to come out, or they can travel up the lamina and come out your hairline. Those are the pesky ones. Those will take about a year to grow out.
Goes up there?
Right here, a lot of your abscesses will get stuck between the dead and the live. And that's why we have some of those hard times. But sometimes these abscesses will travel around the outside or the solar border or the coffin bone and travel up the hoof wall through the lamina and pop out your cornet band. You see that? We'll come over there. Let's get a rag. Everybody see this?
Where's the white line? Right there.
The white line is actually right here. It's not this white line. This is actually the stratum medium, which is part of your hoof wall. And the attachment of the sole and the wall is actually the white line.
I had one question. Oh, I hope it's quick.
Go for it.
My horse, that's why I came today, I can put my finger down in here.
Central sulcus infection.
Okay. Is powder's good?
Powder can be good.
Okay. As long
Dry
as I do
environment. Keeping it dry is going to be hard.
Okay.
Because that sometimes you'd be amazed, you guys, that's open all the way up through.
I can put my finger down to there.
And it can actually affect the sensitive or the live frog.
Okay.
And then what happens is because the hoof is split all the way up through the hairline, it actually allows the foot to work independently of itself instead of structurally as one.
Interesting. Okay.
So it's very important on these central sulcuses and when they have the bacteria in to get those infections out of the hoof because it doesn't allow the structures to work as one unit.
Yeah, and you've had it a little while now. They're trying to work on it really hard.
It's going to be hard right now,
Yeah.
but keeping it dry,
Thank you so much.
no problem. Let's, thank you.
You're good?
Let's tear this one off, and then we're going to tear off the outer hoof. And see the lamina? Let's, yes?
But they know. They help me all the time.
Do you know why this was on this particular horse, this shoe?
That horse I actually got about 10 years ago. I don't know what caused the original injury to him, but he had cellulitis, and it actually cut the circulation off. So the venous plexa and the venous artery, it actually cut it off, and it sloughed it like a bad fingernail. The horse was actually way better after the hoof capsule came off because it's like smashing your thumb or your fingernail. And once that fingernail came off, he felt all that pressure released. He was actually walking on his coffin bone. But unfortunately, he can't walk on his coffin bone.
So this is why the shoe is this shape?
Yes, that's an egg bar. It's mainly for support.
Yeah, okay.
And it's supporting the limb, actually.
Okay, yeah. The tendons, right?
Yes. Yes. Tendons, ligaments. All right, let's try to pull this outer hoof wall off and see the lamellae. This is our attachment between our hoof wall and the lamina corium that help produce and engorge that lamina. Yeah, and just kind of rotate. Is this sounding good? Let's see. I don't want to mess up our angular cartilage or ungular cartilage because I really wanted to show you them because they actually go all the way down into the hoof. Yeah, go ahead.
You act like I've done this before.
And this is going to be cool because we're going to be able to see the solar border of our coffin bone. Look how tough that is. She's a nice hoof.
Strong hoof. Just wants to rotate.
Let's actually do that other side. Kind of snip through our angular cartilage there. Ungular. Come on. The foot is very vascular. It is so engorged with blood. And if it wasn't, you'd be having that hoof capsule in your hand. Look at all that blood coming out of there.
So this horse had healthy hoofs?
He had healthy hoofs. It must have been colic. As far as what I could tell, when I was trimming him, there's no rotation. Each of these limbs are from the same horse. One's a hind, 2 are hinds, and so the front feet are round because that's what bears your weight. The back feet are pointy because that's your push, that's your propulsion, most of it. If you set him up, I might be able to pop him off like this. There we go. So this is the insensitive lamina. This is our attachment with our live. Here's our coronary groove. That's where the hoof wall is produced. Here's the attachment. And go fibrous.
I'd like to get a picture.
Yes, ma'am.
Did the horse volunteer?
He did. That's your attachment between your lamina.
Oh boy, that I don't have.
That's what separates.
That I don't have anymore.
Here's your cornerback or your groove.
Okay.
And that's where your hoof wall is produced from. Pretty cool. Here's our lamina. This is insensitive lamina. So this is not a sensitive structure. It's what attaches the hoof wall. It's the other side.
Just on the big picture there.
Here's our groove, corner band groove. Pretty cool. Get one. Yes, go ahead.
Touch the inside.
Touch it. It's great. It's very fibrous. You see the ones that are longer, each one has littler ones inside, and they interlock and they just keep interlocking. And those are what breaks down when you have the lamina, when you have laminitis.
Right.
Let's sneak over here real quick. See the tissues?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This is your cornet band here. Your corium sits inside here and produces the hoof wall itself. We'll look at the live sensitive structures next, and that actually produces the hoof wall. Pretty cool. You want to touch it? Touch it. It's great. That's the insensitive attachment. You guys want to see?
So this is the laminae?
This is the insensitive lamina.
Okay.
This is what attaches to the sensitive lamina and attaches to the coffin bone. Pretty cool?
Okay. Now say that again.
This is the insensitive lamina.
Okay.
Here's your cornet band. This is your groove.
Okay.
And this is where your hoof wall is produced.
Wow. So as the horse wears the hoof wall down, it naturally regenerates?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And from the live structures, that's where it's produced. Let's take a look at these live structures. We kind of got into the lamina up here at the toe. Here's the sensitive lamina.
She will eat that.
See how they interlock? You can actually see these tiny, 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 tiny little, and that's what creates the periopal, which is the white stuff growing down your hoof wall that you guys are always like, what is that? Why is it so long? And that's where that comes from, but your hoof wall comes from there and grows down as well.
So does it really do any good to put hoof dressing on the outside of the hoof?
Yes, because it definitely helps the cornet band. It doesn't matter from really, if you want to do the whole wall, you can do the whole wall, but the cornet band is the most important because it does absorb some of that nutrition. Okay. And a lot of stuff we do have to do because we live in such a wet environment is control that environment. So 90% of us need a drier environment, at least here in Northeast Ohio. And our feet they're always wet. And that makes everything pliable too and allows rocks and everything else and infection to get into the foot. And that's why sometimes we deal with these abscesses on a long-term basis is because of our environment. Here's our lamina. Yeah.
I really want to touch it. Oh.
This is the solar border of your coffin bone. This is your solar corium. You guys seen that before? Okay. Yeah, you can kind of see these. That's.
Yeah, what's that like?
Those are your little papillas.
Oh, okay.
And each one of them are a little bit fibrous, a little more fibrous than the other. Yeah. And your coffin bone is right underneath here. Right underneath here. I mean, you can feel the coffin bone. And this is the live attachment to the coffin bone. So that the live attaches to the bone and then attaches itself to the dead. Yeah. And that's how it connects itself and stays supported. Everybody knows that the horse's skeleton doesn't actually contact the ground. It is actually suspended up inside the hoof capsule. So their skeleton never hits the ground like ours does. Our skeleton hits the ground.
So that's new hoof, like that will grow out?
Yes, from right here. Yep.
So, and then it's like squishy. So
yep.
when does it it hardens?
It becomes horn at the top and will grow down. It's a pliable horn.
That's crazy.
Here's our bone right there. You can kind of see it. We got into it.
Oh, yeah. Huh.
That's our lamina, live lamina.
If this horse had laminitis, what would it look like? Would he be?
There'd be scarring, dead tissue. This would still have to grow. So what happens is the dead becomes piled up, and this attaches itself to the scar tissue and then attaches itself to the outer hoof wall. And that's when you get what's called the laminar wedge, or you see the elongated white line. That's what's happening in there is the dead, the foot still has to grow, and it's still trying to grow out and supply that foot with blood. So it has to kind of push all that out. And you just good attachment there, you know what I mean? So when we see elongated white lines, we really want to pay attention to those, because those usually mean something's going on inside our hoof. And it is usually a lamella attachment problem. Sometimes we'll see bruising, and that's just impact. Yes. Yes. Get your picture.
Yeah, please. Thank you.
This is your live lamina. Oh, you got blood in it now.
That's it.
Here's your coffin bone right underneath there. You can see how it's attached there. You can kind of hear it.
Okay, yeah.
See?
What did you say about the laminitis? How does that change the look of the laminitis?
So right here you have the live lamina, right? So it dies or becomes corrotic, and the live still tries to attach itself to the dead. So then therefore it grows out together and becomes a big lamina wedge. That's usually what you see in the foot. Actually on that, here's a good example.
So it makes the ridge, is that what makes the ridges on the hoof then?
Yes, but well, see how these are elongated? See how big this white line is?
Oh, yeah.
Right? That's because the dead tissue still has to grow.
Pushing it out?
It has to. It attaches itself to the top of it.
Oh, okay.
So then, therefore, you see it as it grows out.
What causes the ridges on the foot then? I thought that was...
Which ridges?
On the outside.
Those are growth rings, usually. They can be a lot of things.
Okay.
Growth rings, they can be fever rings, they can be stress rings, they can be numerous things. They can be nutrition rings.
A lot.
Now they do mean, but you got to learn how to read them, you know what I mean? Like, they're usually early warning signs of change in the foot.
Okay.
But what that change is could be a lot of things.
Okay.
No, it's just your foot's growing. Now you want to see those lines fairly straight, you know what I mean, and not bendy or wavy, because then that would probably mean an imbalance in your hoof or an imbalance in your hoof wall. You see that stretched lamina? What was you over here yet? So this is your lamina, this is your live lamina. Okay. This is your coffin bone, and all that live attaches that, and then it attaches to your hoof wall.
If the coffin bone is damaged, is there any cure for that?
No, it's bone. Okay. There's no cure for that. Definitely not. And that's usually your hoof structure, your hoof capsule actually is dictated by the coffin bone. So whatever the coffin bone is, the bone inside is actually what the outer hoof looks like. because that's the main attachment. So it dictates that.
So if the coffin bone is healthy, the whole hoof is healthy.
Most of the time. Most of the time. Lamina?
Yes.
Pretty cool. Everybody else see? Here's your coffin bone.
And so the laminitis, the bone shifts forward.
Well, the bone will actually rotate down because of the tearing between the dead and the live structure, and then it'll allow the bone to rotate. Here we have an example of stretched lamina in this foot. That's actually the white line, and that's how big it is. It's like a 1/2 inch big, and that's because of the dead
so that
tissue.
whole part there.
Yes, that's what your white line. Remember how tight it was on that, on the top of the foot on this guy? That's how much
that's
damage.
damage.
Yes. You can actually see it here. It rotated a little bit. This bone here should be tight up against here, and you can see the separation here. This little spot here and here. That's how much this bone has actually pulled away and rotated from the wall.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. You guys want to get into some tendons and see how they kind of come down and maybe see what they look like? Do we? Do we though?
I do. I thought maybe I would, but it's actually not that bad.
So let's just try to expose some of these tendons and some of these collateral ligaments that we were talking about, and some of these suspensory ligaments. I may need you.
Okay. Well, I'm here.
You the bomb.
Working off the clock here.
Right?
Here in my time.
Exactly. Okay. Come on, Blade.
Is that a scalpel?
Yes. You wouldn't believe how many I was just cutting some of the layers off last night, and like how many I actually went through. I guess we'll start with the back half of the hoof. Maybe we'll try to expose the deep flexor tendon. You wanna? Nah,
The bottom?
you're all right, because I don't want to cut you.
I mean, I'll survive.
Let's
I think
actually,
you're gonna cut yourself with the slides.
let's get rid of this guy. Actually, let's go with the front here first. We'll see the common extensor tendon. It comes down the leg here. Let's try to get some of this fascia off. Can you hold that for me? Just kind of skin her down here. Here's our suspensory ligaments, how they come around. Yep, come around and attach from the sesamoids. So this is our common tendon, and it originates from the common extensor muscle. It does go over the knee and attaches up to the top. Here we can actually, you have the lateral extensor tendon, and it originates from the lateral extensor muscle. See how they two kind of go together? This one's the lateral, and this one's our common. So as we cut down the hoof here, we're just gonna keep going down the leg.
So what is all that white stuff?
This is actually your tendon itself. Here we're getting actually into the joint. So this is like, see how this is moving here? Let's get around this side a little bit. Is that our ligament? So we're actually kind of getting into the joint capsule here a little bit. Let's come down here.
You ever get tired of being a blacksmith? You could be a surgeon.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Cuts aren't very pretty. I don't think so.
I don't know, you're doing a pretty good job.
It's kind of hard to.
Except there.
Yeah. You see how it's really got an attachment right there. Let's cut the attachment right there. We'll come down. We'll try to keep this longer.
It takes a lot to tear it.
Oh yeah. We'll try to keep the whole thing here, right down to the bone, past our suspensory ligaments. I'd rather do this than talk.
Oh, you're doing a good job.
So as we come down here, here's our joint between our short pastern and our coffin joint. Let's turn it around here. You can kind of see that. I don't know if you can see here, but here's our lateral tendon. Yeah, if you want. And see how they kind of come together right here? That's the end of them. Let's watch your fingers come out. Pretty cool, huh? Lateral, main extensor, common extensor. And it actually attaches right here to the extensor process of your coffin bone. So it'll be right here. And that helps to extend the leg. So let's cut that off. This is really not gooey. If you guys want to feel it and stretch it, you really can. You guys, anybody want to do that? All right. I do have wipies. We can pass around the wipies. Well, my wipies ain't very wipey. Anybody else?
Now
wanna
he
feel?
tells me. Thank you. Oh, I got two.
Need more, just let me know. Pretty cool, huh? That's the common and the lateral tendon. I'm just going to let you guys pass that around a little bit. If you want, pass it. Put it on top of the wipies. All right, let's maybe try to find the superficial flexor tendon and the deep flexor tendon. Here we have, right in the back here, is the superficial flexor tendon, and it comes down the back of the leg and splits right here and allows the deep flexor tendon to come right through it. So here's our superficial flexor tendon. And it kind of comes down here. And you can kind of see how the deep digital flexor tendon kind of goes right through it. This is our deep flexor tendon. Here's where it separates. There we go. Oh, she's coming. We're cutting through our sesamoidian ligaments, and they hold the sesamoidian bones together. Here we're coming down the back of the leg, and we're exposing the deep flexor.
Doing great work with that knife.
Thank you. I'm actually going pretty smooth. Right. On the back of the leg here, there's some annual ligaments, and they basically just support the fetlock joint, the back of the tendons, kind of hold them all together, and then you got the distal palmar annual ligament that holds the back half of the hoof here. Who wants to feel the superficial flexor tendon? This one's a little bit more fibery. Definitely has a lot more fibers through it. Anybody? We'll throw it up on here to the table. I don't know if it tastes like bacon. I'm throwing it at you. Ready? Here we go. Feel the heft to that though. It's pretty heavy. Here, let's cut through the sesamoidal collateral ligaments.
So you're down to bone there?
Yes. Yep, we're down to the sesamoids. We're not really going to get into too much of the sesamoids. It's a very complicated. Let's see if we can find the check ligament. Because sometimes that check ligament will be the one that gives you guys the problem. I think it's missing, actually, to be honest with you. It's up the leg a little bit further. So we're kind of missing it. It's kind of here and attaches itself to the bottom of the cannon bone. But here's the deep flexor tendon. Here's the back of our distal sesamoid bone, our sesamoid bones. Right here is our suspensory ligament. And it comes down the leg and splits off and attaches to the bottom of your long pastern and your top of your short pastern joint. And its job is just to suspend and help suspend the leg. Well, I think the check ligament actually is there. It's right here. So here we have, let's cut that. Let's cut this away. See the branches there? See how that splits? And allows the deep flexor to actually come through it. You know? It's good, because I'm not. Cut through the collateral cartilages here. Kind of attaches a few ligaments there too. Let's get rid of that. So let's peel this off, and you guys can see where it splits or bifurcates. So I can't even say that word. Yeah. And let's go down to where our deep digital flexor tendon attaches to the semilunar crest of our coffin bone, past our navicular bone, over the bottom, and maybe we can get into the navicular bursa a little bit. Here we're cutting our deep digital cushion out of the way so we can see our attachment of our deep flexor tendon. Look how hard that is to cut. That's what stopped the bandsaw. That's your deep digital cushion, and that's designed to absorb most of that shock. And it's actually dulled my blade enough where I need another one. Isn't that crazy?
That's the grizzle when you eat meat.
Yeah, exactly. Walk, you son of a gun. Well, let's get rid of that deep digital cushion. So this can change shape. Sometimes the low angled heeled horses, the cushion's not all that great, big, and healthy, so it kind of dissipates how much force it can absorb. And there's a hunk of our deep digital cushion. Let's try to get some more of this out of the way so we could see the back side of our navicular deep flexor and see. Let's cut this away. Look how, I mean, it's just rubber. That's a brand new knife. Guess if you use the sharpest side, huh? Some more.
How old was this horse?
I'm not sure. Not sure. He looked like fairly younger horse. He's in pretty good shape. He looked like he grew quite a bit of hoof wall. Like I said, I thought he was a quarter horse. Just the way his makeup of his feet was. I could be wrong. He could have been a thoroughbred with really good sole, but very rarely does a thoroughbred have that much sole. I mean, that's a lot of sole. But here we got our deep flexor. Here's our angular cartilage. Let's try to maybe cut those out a little bit and expose those a little bit more. Ungular cartilage. And that's where the venous plexa and the venous artery kind of run next to or through.
The different breeds of horses have a different amount of sole?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah, and it's usually determined like, it's nutritional based and it's environmentally based. There's a lot that goes into depth of sole. How much guy leaves in, how much foliates. Well, here we're going to cut through the ungular cartilage. And we'll cut the, trying to get around here. The ungular cartilage actually goes all the way down past your coffin bone wings. Actually has some lamellae on it, and it actually has some sole corium on it. And the bottom of it is actually what makes up the seed of corn or the heel. It's kind of like the back of it or the pointy part. Let's see if we can get this bad boy off here. Let's cut our tendon out of the way. Yeah, pull up on her. There we go. And that's our deep flexor. It attaches to the backside of your coffin bone. And that allows it to pull.
Anybody want it?
Anybody want? It's probably the most biggest and fibrous one.
Yep.
Let's try to expose our. Let's just walk around and show you guys the back side of the hoof where we cut the deep digital flexor tendon out of, where it attaches to the back side of the coffin bone. This one's gooey.
A little late now, Shaun.
That's true. Go with it, huh? Here's the back. Here's our tendon right here.
Wow.
Here's the back of our navicular bone. And right under here would be a big pocket of synovial fluid to lubricate these joints and how the tendon runs over top. Here's our ungular cartilage. Look how big they actually are. They actually go all the way down through here and attach to the coffin bone wing.
Oh, yeah.
And it's right here. See that?
Wow.
So here's our deep flexor tendon. Here's your navicular bone. Right there. And this is where your navicular bursa would be. Here's your flexor tendon.
Okay.
Navicular bone. All that cushion. Ungular cartilage. Pretty cool.
There's a lot going on.
There's a lot going on. There's your deep digital flexor. backside of your,
Cash the injury.
yeah, backside.
Oh, that's crazy. What's that coming right there?
That's synovial fluid. So that's actually, we're in the joint capsule there.
Yeah.
So that's actually the lubrication of your joint.
Wow.
You can. Touch the articulating surfaces. See how so there's your deep flexor, backside of your navicular bone, angular cartilage.
Pliable still.
Right? And like, look how strong this thing is still. We've already taken apart all the tendons.
That's sad.
And it's still pretty strong. So those collateral ligaments and suspensory ligaments are actually pretty tough. Pretty cool, huh? There's your deep flexor. There's the back of your navicular bone. There's the rest of your ungular cartilage. See that pocket of fluid there? Right there? See it bubbling out? That's synovial fluid. That's the lubrication of your joint. A lot of you guys that have coffin bone injections or navicular bone injections, that's usually the joint that they're injecting. Here's your deep flexor. Here's your bottom side of your navicular bone. Even as navicular bone, it's really nice. It's really smooth. There's no abrasions or holes or so. This was a fairly young horse. Musica?
Oh yeah. Oh,
Get in there. Right there's your navicular bone. Here's your deep flexor. See how it bubbling right there?
Yeah.
That's where the synovial fluid is.
Oh,
Yeah, we're in. We right here.
Good there.
See?
right there.
I'll take the deep digital.
What happens when a horse has navicular?
It's usually
Inflammation?
well, it can be inflammation of the ligament, which is either suspensory ligament or the palmar or the navicular bone itself gets spurs on it, and it can irritate the back of the deep flexor tendon. You guys want to see? Right there's our deep flexor. There's the back side of our navicular bone, and it comes around and attaches to the semilunar crest of your coffin bone and allows that foot to flex this way. Pretty cool, huh?
So is that an overuse thing, or
What do you mean?
navicular issues? Are they for genetic?
It can,
overuse?
both.
Okay.
Both. I would definitely go with both.
Okay.
Ungular cartilage right there that we talked about. There's our deep flexor tendon. The backside of the navicular bone. We're actually in the joint capsule there, so you can kind of see how it's synovial fluid in there. That's the lubrication of the joint. Backside of our sesamoid bones. We'll come around. Here's our deep digital flexor. And there's the back side of our navicular bone. Here's our short pasturing joint. Pretty cool. And here's your deep flexor. Here's the back side of your navicular bone. And then we're actually right there where you can kind of see that we're actually inside the short pasturing joint when we cut it open. Here's our deep flexor. And it attaches to the bottom of our coffin bone. And your navicular bone right here. Nice and smooth. Here's our other joint, which would be the short pasturing. We're almost out of synovial fluid because I keep squeezing her. But like, she should bubble there. And that lubricates the joint. Pretty cool. Ungular cartilage, look how big they are. I kind of cut them down and open. They go all the way down through here and actually make up the seed of corn. Pretty cool, huh? Let's go down here one more time. Did you guys see this? That's your deep flexor, backside of your navicular bone, and there's your short pasturing joint, ungular cartilage.
Dude, you know I'm gonna go home.
Yeah, you want this to barbecue? Pretty cool, huh? Here's your deep flexor, just the backside of your navicular bone. We're inside the short pasturing joint. You kind of got it open and exposed. So with that, guys, do you learn a little bit more? Do you understand anything a little bit more? Do you understand the structures and what makes up the outer hoof wall? Does it make a little more sense now that you can see it from the inside out? Pretty cool, huh? Any other questions? Go for it.
Yeah, a little something on the formulas and stuff. I use Farrier formulas. Is that the best to use?
Farrier formula is good. Hoof Secret is.
Hoof Secret.
They're all good products, to be honest with you. In my opinion, I think you got to switch them up. You know, do 6 months of this, 6 months of that, because I think the horse actually kind of gets immune to it, or gets used to that amount. So
what would you recommend? I mean,
either, like, I really like either one of the products are really nice. The Hoof Secret's a good one. It seems to grow a lot of hoof. The Farrier formula is a really good one too. It just seems like you feed them for a while and it plateaus. Yeah, it just kind of plateaus. You can try.
Okay. My horse had a blowout from an abscess. And,
Okay.
Not a big hole, and the Farrier's working so hard, you know, to keep us from ripping everything out.
Where's the abscess?
My concern is now the toe is getting so long, because he's, you know, he's afraid that he won't have anything. He's afraid that the rest of that part of the foot will be ripped away. So I don't know. My concern is how long the toe is. It's a 16-hand toe.
Yeah, he's just kind of trying to wait a little bit, trying to get past that abscess to cut out the rest of the hoof wall.
Yeah, and it makes me nervous when I'm riding him or anything, because I'm afraid of if he's going to do any damage to the tendon.
He's not going to do any damage to the tendons. The thing is the hole's already there. So to be honest with you, it's open completely underneath it, all the way through the bottom. So even if it cracked off, it's already open underneath. So like, you're not seeing it visually, but like, it's already, the hoof wall is already kind of compromised. So you might as well not even worry about it. You know what I mean? Keep it clean.
Yeah, oh yeah, it's near the end. But let me see.
He's just trying to wait to get the rest of that cut off there.
Exactly.
But if it breaks off, not a big deal, really.
Okay, yeah.
Unless it's in like a heel area, you know, or half the heel's coming with it, right. So that's the only time it's like you'd want to worry about that.
But he's being that he's so low heel too.
Yeah, I mean, it shouldn't make it. He shouldn't be too compromised. And now, because it is, the hoof structure is compromised there, but the horses are very durable. That's one of those things where the hoof kind of heals itself. You know what I mean? And you won't have to worry about it. But keeping it clean is key. You know, flushed out, dry.
And you say not like Rainmaker on the coronary vein?
You can, yeah, Rainmaker, any of those pliable. You know, if it's really wet out right now, you may not want to do Rainmaker, you know what I mean? I always say, you kind of do what you do to your feet, what the weather's doing. So if it's raining, I'm not putting conditioner on. I'm usually trying to maybe harden it or keep it dry. You know what I mean? So in the drier environments, then that's when I'd probably want to keep it more pliable. Because the hoof capsule itself is elastic and dynamic, and it'll change structure to the weight it's got to bear. So if it's a harder structure, it tends to split and crack instead of bend.
And I got another question. I have a coming up 3-year-old and his feet are straight.
Yes.
Now I noticed that on the lateral side, on one of his feet, starting to flare out. And he's trimmed every 4 weeks.
It could be conformational. It could be, you know, sometimes the structures, they bear a little more weight when they're like conformational. Usually toed out, toed in, you know, that all kind of plays into flaring. Is he? Sometimes it could be unequal pressures, you know what I mean? Medial-lateral balance maybe, you know.
I have one more quick question.
Go ahead.
Like the stuff they put in the arenas, like that magnesium, I don't know if it's called magnesium, it's something, a zinc of some kind. You get it from Ukraine.
To keep it moist?
Yes.
Yes.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I heard one barn won't use it because it says it does damage to their hoof, and then one says it's.
I've never heard that, but I think a wet arena is definitely a better arena to absorb shock, and kind of the dry arena tends to kind of just it more kind of evaporates it, and it doesn't get more support.
The dryness, I notice in our barn we have more abscess in the dry than in the wet.
Really? Well, sometimes that becomes because the abscesses become entrapped while it's wet, and then they become dry and get trapped, and then they fluster up. Yep, go ahead.
My horse has a cut by the coronary band into the hairline there. Is that going to hurt the hoof growth? Or?
It shouldn't. It might grow out in the hoof wall as a line, but it shouldn't hurt it at all. Okay. It might be, not so pretty for a while, but other than that, it'll be fine.
Do you want to keep that moist or more dry?
I'd probably keep that more dry, clean.
So,
you know?
Okay. If a horse continually has abscesses in her soul, then we have that problem. Any advice on that?
It sounds usually when they're chronic. When they're chronic like that, it's usually environmental. So maybe in a wet environment, or he's got some. The key to some of those things are just pick your guys' feet. If you guys would pick your feet like every day, even if you don't ride, that is key to some of those bacterials and rocks getting jammed up in the white line and becoming into some of those sensitive structures where they fuster up. But sometimes when the hoof is pliable, it allows stuff in. Sometimes it's our nail holes.
So we get the horse down again
and
turn around 1 time, 2 times outside in the mud, comes back in, abscess starts again. So
sometimes
I'm thinking maybe it's bacterial.
It definitely could be bacterial. Or sometimes you don't get the first one all the way out, and then the hoof wall closes up and it fusters back up. And the thing about abscesses is it could start over in the medial heel and blow out the lateral heel. I mean, that's how crazy it is, because it can travel around the whole solar aspect of your coffin bone. You know what I mean? So if it's here, it might be here before it pops out from the bottom side at your white line. Or at the heels. See how many abscesses occur here. So it travels up the back and it comes out here because this tends to be the softest. You know what I mean? And it allows that abscess to come through. Where here they just keep fighting the horn. You know what I mean? I can't come out. And they get trapped in there. Or sometimes they'll come out a little bit, pus for maybe a day, and then that horn will grow back over top of it, encapsulating it again. 3 months down the road, abscess. I would do a lot of soaks, Epsom salt soaks. Even if you don't have an abscess, you can use those 3M pads, the Lintex pads, and you'd be amazed how much thrush and bacteria that actually pulls out of your hoof. Even your central sulcus. And all you do is dunk it in water. So wrap it up, and that'll really pull any of those. There's some white lightning. You could use that. It gets deeper into those holes where you can't see. It's the vapor that actually kills some of that bacteria. Or they have a product called Clean Tracks, and that you can do that, and that'll help get some of that deeper stuff out of that hoof wall. Because sometimes they just become capsulated and stuck. It takes one dirty hole or one dirty rock, and then that travels up the hoof wall, abscess.
What about vesicles or anything like that? I mean, is that,
Sometimes, now if he was foraging or overreaching, or that abscess was being caused by a bruise, and bruises actually occur from the solar corium, and the bruises actually bruise the bottom half of the hoof. And by the time you see them growing out in your hoof wall, they're already old. You know what I mean? But sometimes the concussion can actually create some of those abscesses too. So maybe if he's thin-soled, maybe a pair of shoes would help. If he is thin-soled and it's constantly impacting the ground, that could be an ideal too. If he's very thin-soled. Clean Tracks, White Lightning. She was up first. Go ahead.
Going back to her thing about washing the shoe, I found, and this is just me, I found Visonex to clean the foot.
Visonex?
It's a soap,
Mhm.
and you're supposed to put it, wash the area. It's for
Yes.
people. You wash the area with it, and then you rinse it off. My horse had a little bit of white line disease, and I didn't know what to
Use or what?
and I just squirted it on for a couple of days without rinsing it, turned them out, and the next time the blacksmith worked on it, goes, "What are you doing to this foot?"
Mhm.
It was almost cleared up.
Right.
So it just,
I think a lot of times we neglect cleaning our feet and picking our feet,
it
and
was
it
just an easy thing. I just squirted it on and turned them out, and
yeah, and it leads to these bacteria. So I think the cleaner you can do, whatever product you're using, that we keep these feet cleaner than we are, especially in the muddy season as it now. I mean, how many people bring their horses and throw it right in the stall? Don't even wash them off, don't even pick them. That's the worst case scenario, because you just allowed that foot to fester all night in its poop and its mud, and it got no air to it. So it allows that foot to stay constantly wet, and it'll actually pull that moisture from that mud pack or poop pack.
but the Visonex is a quick
Visonex.
and cheap. You don't have to go to the store and pay.
She likes the Visonex.
It's cheap.
I've never heard of it, I've never tried it, but options.
When I bought my horse, he had really bad feet and he had really bad sulfur infections.
Mhm.
Bad. And the vet had me soaking fledglets in copper tox and sticking it down in there.
Yes.
And I think we cleared up all the infections. There's no smell, but the bulbs have never come back together. So there's these really deep grooves. And will they ever close?
They actually will close. If they're still open, I'd still say you probably got an infection in there still. You know what I mean? They're not growing back together for a reason. Or that you maybe have your Farrier debride them a little bit. That way they're a little healthier and they have the opportunity to come together.
Is there anything you like with them? I tried everything.
I would do maybe dry it out, like iodine sugar packs. You know what I mean? Just stain your sugar, wrap it up, do that over a period of time, and it'll actually change like the coloring of that frog and maybe help you in that area. As long as your central sulcus ain't open, because if that's open, you got to get the infection out of that. Because you'll never get rid of the infection without the central sulcus closed. And it's really closed. These what it looks like when it's open, really. You can almost see all the way up into the hairline.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That central sulcus will go far. Well, look how far it almost travels into the sensitive lamina, or sensitive sole here. So you can see how painful some of that can be. And if you don't get that deep infection out of there, it can be a problem. If there's no infection, this is complete. There's actually, yeah. See how this guy? See how it goes all the way through there? And it almost goes up into the digital cushion? I mean, that's how far some of those central sulcus infections go. And I mean, this whole cleft is open. So that can be, I find that bacteria is a big problem, especially here in the Northeast.
What about using alcohol on that?
You can,
Try it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes some things can be some caustic to some stuff. As long as you're not into sensitive structures, you could use a little bit more caustic.
How long will it take once you keep treating the sulcus crack? How long will it take to close if you're doing it right?
It'll close up fairly quickly. I've had them close up in a week or two. You know what I mean? I really like using the tomorrow or the today for them. And you can't get them over the counter anymore. And then I would back it up with a little bit of cotton ball, just so the mud would stay out of it, and it would actually help. Or I'd take a popsicle stick and kind of wipe it, and kind of like wipe its butt, and get the bacteria out of it, and then clean it. Because it's amazing how deep those are. They can go. I mean, I shoved the tip the other day and one all the way in, and it took the whole tip.
That's what I read. You can't get it now.
Right. I see Amazon is still carrying it.
I couldn't find it.
No, really. So it might be off. But I wonder if you ask the vets now if you could maybe get a script. Because all it is for drying up cows. You know, it's drying up their udders. One's drying them today and one's drying them tomorrow, you know? So I've heard, I don't know if you can get it, but goat, they have Gojo, which is the goat version of cow. So
It's the antibiotic.
that's what, yep, and that's what actually helps the central sulcus, because there's not a lot of, the frog is one of the less vascular structures, so it struggles the most with bacteria because it's not vascular.
Do you like that powder?
The powder is good, but the area again has to be clean and dry, and then get the treatment in it. If it's not clean and dry, you might as well not even put it on. Go for it.
What is your opinion about cavallo boots or any kind of boot that completely covers?
I think they're all right. I think if the horse needs it and he's doing fine barefoot, I'm not against them. I think they're very well. I think some of the problems with those are maybe stones. I think it's important to maybe stop every once in a while on your trail ride and make sure if you go through the creek or the river that there's no stones in them. And basically, but they're pretty good. I would recommend them. It's better than sometimes shoeing them if you don't have to, because the worst thing we do is put a nail in the hoof. I mean, if we're protectors of the hoof structure and we want it to stay a complete unit, and then the first thing we do is shove a nail through it, expose it to bacteria, allow it inside the hoof.
What do you recommend for a horse that has soft soles?
I like the iodine sugar method. That really hardens them up. They have turpentine. It's just helps. Just helps it harden, pulls out the moisture and kind of hardens the area. That's really good. But I really like using the iodine sugar. You'd be amazed how fast that kind of hardens up. And then maybe back it up with the Venice turpentine.
So what's the formula for the sugar?
The sugar is only making the iodine a pack. So you don't want it soupy. You want it packy, And then, pop it in the foot, pop it in between the sole and the shoe or just the bare foot, and that'll help that area out tremendously. I don't really recommend iodine if the central sulcus is open because you can damage some of the sensitive structures in the hoof, and you don't want to burn tissues. You want to heal tissues.
What was you said the 3M pad?
Lintex, 3M Lintex pads. They are really good for pulling out infections that are deep in the sulcus.